At Ritual, we know what goes into the holiday season: the potluck planning, the gift giving, the spreadsheets. So this new year, take a moment for yourself with science backed support that puts you first. So, whether you're focusing on supporting foundational health with a clean vegan multivitamin or supporting your gut health with Symbiotic Plus, do it with 30% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hello, this is Michelle Edgesami, Bookworm Podcast, and I am so excited about today's chat because we have such a rising star. I'd like to welcome Freedom Matthews. Freedom, hello.
Hi, lovely to be here.
So, Freedom is not only a writer, but she's a social media influencer and has done lots of wonderful things in helping to promote Jasami. But today we're going to focus on her the creativity aspect of her life and specifically her writing, what she's going the project she's been working on, which we'll discuss in a moment. So, Freedom, the first question I want to ask is your life as a writer, when did it start and what inspired you?
Well, I think I'd say officially at the age of 14, I started writing stream of consciousness poetry. And then from that point on into my late teens, it was novels. But I've been surrounded by storytellers my entire life. So I think I just inherited the ability to tell stories in my own way from that point on.
So, the first story, do you remember the first story that you ever wrote?
Oh, good question. This is kind of I guess I could say embarrassing, but I don't think it is. My grandmother and my aunts loved Harlequin novels or romances, those naughty romances, and that's all they had on their shelves. So I was writing sort of cheesy romances, which I love still to this day. Fluffy romances are a thing I love as well as my fantasy. So I think it was, I can't exactly remember what it was, but I think it was just definitely a romance of some kind.
I actually know Harlequin romances, and when I was in my teens, I loved them. And part of it, I loved the innocence of it. You know, you knew the plot line. It was the same in every one. Girl meets boy, boy meets girl. You know, there's the problem with it, and then they don't like each other, then they do like each other, then they fall in love and live happily ever after. Pretty much the same kind of plot. But I always believe that it's the characters in a book that make it different. So, although plots can be similar and such, what is it that you imbue into your characters?
I try and bring a reality to them because I write fantasy. It can be so out of this world and fantastical, but I try and ground them in reality. They also come to me quite real. They come to me as real people, and I kind of know all their backstory and why they're the way they are, or it comes to me as I start writing them. So I try and find sort of either their tragic past or something that has affected them, or just try and find some reality in them and go from there.
You know, the one thing that fascinates me is the process of different writers. So, do you just sit down and write the whole story? Do you plot it out ahead? Do you write character descriptions? Tell us, Freedom, what is it you do?
I was a very much a pantser at one point. I would say I'm more of a plantser now because I have the basic outline. I have the beginning, middle, and the end, and I try and sort of discovery write the rest of it. Um, I don't always know the ending, I must admit that, but I am someone who will, yeah, as I say, like to be a discovery writer. I'm someone who can see somewhat ahead, but not quite always. I like to
I I
grow
think
through
it's
it.
a I think it's a great surprise. One of my stories, I was writing it, and one of the characters rolled in on a wheelchair. I was completely shocked. How did she end up in the wheelchair? So it's the stuff you create around it. Do you do character descriptions at all once you've started it or beforehand?
Until this most recent, my editing journey with Jasami, they all seemed to be in my head. I did a lot of Pinterest and kind of maybe noted here and there, but I don't necessarily have a book Bible. I do now, and it's something that I will use going forward because my wonderful editor Raquel has taught me so much through my process, and it's a lot more helpful to other people like my beta readers and my CPs and maybe even, other teams and things. So I think at the moment that is something I will do going forward. Before, no, it was all in my head, which I guess you can end up with inconsistency and have issues. So I would say personally, from now on, for me, it will be something I write down.
So let's introduce the project, the name of your novel.
It's the Legends of Evernil, Scarlet Redemption.
So it's more than one book. And when you're building a world and when you have a trilogy, when you have a longer process, it is a good idea to be able to keep track of it, know them, especially when you have multiple characters, and the good and the bad and, the ugly and the everything. Do you have a particular favorite villain? Now, usually we ask about the protagonist and such, but do you have a favorite villain and why is it? Is it something that's evil in them or something that there's possible redemption or
My first thought was our main antagonist, Nox, but he'd be too easy to say. So I'm going to say Kane, who is our main baddie's right-hand man, and I don't think he's very redemptive, unfortunately. But he's fun to write because it's fun to write bad characters sometimes. I'm usually one of those people who cheer for the hero, and some people love villains. So I'm hoping people who love villains will love Kane. I don't want to say too much because it'll be in spoiler territory, but yes, he's not a very nice person.
we don't want to do any spoiler alerts. We don't want to do that. So, do you, during your writing process, so you plan a little bit, but not too much, you know your characters, and as you said, Raquel is our executive editor on this project, and Perla is the illustrator on the project, and you've worked cohesively as a team. It's so wonderful to see because when that is a great gift in itself. What is something that you've learned in this process with Raquel that you think will inspire you for your further writing, your future writing?
I think the biggest is the collaboration between us all. I've worked with editors previously, and it was a different experience and everything. Every single time you probably work with an editor, it's a different experience, but it's been such a cohesion. I feel we've all been on the same team, and I love that. And I love that I feel I trust my team because I know that if they come up with an idea, it's for the good of the book. If I come up with an idea and we can tweak things, it's just one of those, it's so difficult to explain, but we're all here for the same goal and we all know the story back and forward, which is really helpful because I know I can say something and Raquel will know exactly what I mean and which section of the book I mean. And the cohesion is just, I guess I'm not very being very clear, but yes, the cohesive nature I'd like to bring forward and make sure that I'm on board with that with with each team I work with going forward.
And the way you've described it is about trust as well. It's
Yes, yeah,
trusting the relationship and trusting that you're all on the same journey to create the best possible work.
yes.
So in the world, we don't want to do any spoiler alerts, but we do want to do some teasing. Absolutely. We want to let people know what's going on. In your world building, what kind of world have you created?
I guess it would be medieval-esque world with a lot of elemental magic. There's always something, the only way you can create magic is through some sort of element, be it fire through having a light source, or if you want to grow something, you need to have water and earth. So it's more based around elemental magic with a good sprinkling of some sort of medieval world, but in its own way. Evernill and the United Realms aren't specifically the UK or anything like that. It's just its own little
Its own little
little
world.
island. Yes.
I think it's really important about creating the realism. Is there in the first book, Scarlet Redemption, is there a part or a section without doing a spoiler alert that you created that you love about the place where it is? Is it
Um,
something that was beautiful, something that wasn't, that you worked on and said, oh, yes, this is exactly what I want people to see as I see it in my mind's eye?
I think it's the temple tree. It's I guess, their version of church, or the phase version of church, and it sort of bands everyone together. And um, even those who aren't particularly religious in the book talk about it because it's so legendary, and it's kind of fun to, again, it will expand as the book goes on. You'll see more of it, but because Evernell was once very beautiful and very floral, it's now very um, desecrated and almost desert-like. Having this beautiful space, which is very deep in the woods and the forests, it's all very beautiful in comparison. I hope they see that whatever Knoll once was, this is now. It's still there, but unfortunately, some things have happened and caused a once beautiful place not to be. So hopefully, that is something that people will see as they read the book.
And that's what I think is very important is that each reader we bring our own baggage, if you will, our own history, our own view on life. And when we read a book, that's integrated into the story. So a lot of readers will get something out, a lesson or a viewpoint that you may not have attended, but something that will enrich their lives. And I think that's one of the most incredible and beneficial parts of being a writer, sharing that idea, but then what people will get from it. What do you think, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot for this, is in a general sense, what would you like people to enjoy most? Is it the story, the characters, all of the above? If there was something that you wanted them to walk away with, hours of pleasure?
I think that's my simple one. Yes, I'd love people to go away entertained. That's what I think every writer wants. They want even at her reaction, happy, sad, positive, whatever they want. But I think it's just seeing a character who is at their lowest grow, and that's kind of how Rua slash Scarlet is in the book. I think you see this person who's very impulsive and very flighty grow, and maybe as we go through the different things that she goes through, you get to see her a little bit. So I think between entertainment and seeing someone grow, they're the two things I'd like people to walk away from.
As the person and as the character, and if it's the protagonist or whoever else it might be, and even secondary characters can come to life in a way that you didn't expect. Did you was there a character, you don't have to name them, that did change throughout the editing process, the writing process, that you really surprised you?
Just trying to think. I think, yes, I don't want to say too much again because spoilers, but there are some side characters that seem to have grown, again, using that word, but yes, I think they've evolved. And even before editing, they weren't necessarily like that. And then as you go through your different drafts, you find them doing more things or different things. So I think, yes, and maybe as things go in the future, I'll name that person. But right now, I don't want to spoil too much.
No, we don't. We absolutely don't. Absolutely not. So we touched on editing a little bit and the process that you followed with Raquel and how she helped you with it. Editing with every writer is very, very different. Some writers will, when they've written it, they'll say it's perfect, doesn't need to be touched. And others are, they say, yes, I understand. Do need to make changes. And then others are a little bit more guarded about changes because I think it's the fear that it will change the story itself. What advice, as a well-experienced writer and, having gone through various editing processes, what advice would you give to new writers? Someone that it's their first book.
I don't think people want to hear it, but for me, it's not to be too precious. As long as you have your story, and there's always that sort of well used phrase, kill your darlings. And it's true. You can't be too precious. As long as your story is still as at its core what you want it to be, allow yourself to delete those big chunks and or change things for the better. It's all for the better. None of these things, the editor's not there to hurt you or hurt your baby, so to speak. It's there to improve it and make it grow. So I'd say don't be so precious. Do fight for the things you perhaps feel so passionate about. these things are suggestions. They're there for the greater good. But yes, don't be precious and allow yourself to maybe give yourself more of a critical eye, And Raquel and I had this thing where it's not really deleted because you have those drafts from previous, and I also have a big document where I have little deleted scenes, and they can always be used for other future projects. Sorry, do not think that they're just gone. I always just think, oh, I've got a previous draft that had this thing in it. I know it's there. Maybe other readers might not see it, or it might be used in the future for something else. But yes, don't be too precious. It's never going to be always gone. It'll be somewhere else. You can use it again.
That's very, very true what you've said. And you've given a great piece of advice to writers is that don't get rid of anything. Keep
No.
it with the date on it, whatever it is, when you do a new one with edits. I'm very fond of creating the date, for that. So I know, okay, it was the one 4 years ago compared to the one 3 years ago. So, and that is critical. Don't delete anything because there might be a beautiful scene in there that wasn't appropriate for this work but can be used in another and will come to life in a different way. So excellent. That's excellent advice right there, Freedom. Absolutely. So now you've been through the editing process for a while, and we're getting to the point where the book is starting to come together, and we're working on the formatting and such, and the cover, Pearl is working on the cover and illustrations and things that will make it beautiful. In addition, that will correlate with your story so that you'll have that beauty that is in a symbiotic relationship with your story. What do you think? And I think we can announce the release date without any tremor. I'm the one with the tremor, but we'll announce the release date just as we're getting towards the end. But what is it about this process now? You finished the editing. What are you excited about with this? Is it holding the book or again, bringing it together in the steps and bringing it together or actually holding it in your hand?
Think I'm always a person who likes to see the progress of it go. But of course, my first instinct is I'd love to see it in my hand and have it and hold it because that's what you're working towards. But I think I do enjoy, again, the collaboration, seeing how Pearl is going to imagine my characters and having all those things come together and seeing it grow. Because again, like I said before, we're all in this together, all merging together, and it's all our baby now. I feel like we've all worked on this together, so it's been wonderful. So I think seeing it grow and having the anticipation happen, and then eventually having it in our hands will be, I think, the cherry on the sundae, which is what we want. So I think a bit of both worlds there.
I think holding it in your hand, with that and seeing it, and you're just realizing that, yes, this is, we've carried it all that way. And then it feels so good. And then sharing it. All right. So, and what is the release date, Freedom?
Release for Scarlet Redemption will be July the 12th, 2025.
Which is a Saturday, which
It's
is
a
great.
Saturday, yes.
And we are holding further details, so people will be checking back with us. Obviously we'll be, announcing further details on the website and such. So the process, you've written the story, you've gone through the editing, we're working on the formatting and bringing it all together. Then you're going to be holding it in your hand. While we're working on that process, what are you going to be doing with the next two books? How far along have they come?
I'll be honest, they're written. It's just now because of editing, we'll be working on them and making them as best as they can be, I think. I've got so many new ideas as well because editing, I did so rounds, obviously. We all do these rounds as editors go. And so things have changed, which is wonderful. And I feel changed for the better. And I want to keep those changes going throughout the rest of the book. So I've got foundations now. It's just making them all match now and making them all as good as the first book is. So that's my plans for the next two.
And I feel sure that's what will happen. I feel sure that's what will happen. So in process with Jasami. It's been wonderful working with you. And I say we because, but the most, Raquel and Perla have been, as they say, done the heavy lifting. They've worked more closely with you. I don't think there's a reason to micromanage such a wonderful team, coming together in that way. The one part that I do want to say is once, so the excitement is continuing. So you're continuing with the next stories so that the changes that you've made are the basis for the next books. And was that, um, the changes were all for the better, but will that affect the next book in a lot of work, or were you surprised?
I would say yes, but I'm not daunted by that because there was reasons for it, and again, it would probably spoil things because it was a lot to do with the ending. So I want to make sure that things that were changed in book one feed into book two and three. Um, and I think people will be excited for the changes, especially those who've read the books previously, my CPs and such. So that'll be really exciting to see their reactions because they've come along with me with the book from the beginning. So it'll be fun to share the changes as it goes forward.
And actually to read the book, which
Of
is
course.
now
Mm.
it will be going on pre-sale about 6 weeks ahead. We'll be offering a limited edition and which we'll describe in more detail on the website so that those who actually want this limited edition, only a few going to be printed, you purchase that and then it's going to go out of print and those are the only ones that are going to be available. And of course, signed by the author, which makes it even more valuable. Absolutely. As this draws to a close, is there any other kind of advice, not just about editing, but about writing itself, that you'd like to share with our listening audience, Freedom?
I think the simple thing is just to keep writing. Don't be scared of it. I know the blank page is very, very daunting, but just get your story down there and don't feel it has to be perfect the first time round. Just get it down and then you can work with it later. You can't edit a blank page, so just get those stories out there and you don't even have to share it if you don't want to, but I would recommend to. But if you have a story in you, write it down. Don't be scared.
I have one final question. I know I said I was wrapping it up, so I have one final question for you before we'll end this conversation. Do you have a process that you follow for writing every day? Do you write every day, every other day? Do you have a certain time of the day that you prefer, or is it just when it's the mood strikes?
Um, I'd say I've become less of a daily writer, but I think once things settle down again, I'll become more of a daily writer again. But my limit really, I try and do 1,000 words a day, which used to be quite easy for me, but that's practice. I've been doing this a long time. But I try and do a little bit each day, even if it's not working on a physical novel. I will be, as you mentioned, working on my social media or doing something book related that will work in favor of something, even if it's research or things like that. But I think, as I say, if I try and get a little bit done each day, I know there's progress on something. So that's my method.
And you've just sparked another question, 1,000 words a day. Have you ever done National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo?
Yes.
In November, we'll give them a plug. How did that go for you?
Um, I think I was finishing a novel, so I think I finished my novel at the time. So I think I didn't necessarily win the 50,000 words, but I think the best I've done in a day is 11K. If I can sort of get down and spend the whole day writing. I kind of just word vomit, as I call it. But yes, I would, again, it's something that not everyone can do, and it's not anything to be worried about if you can't do it. But I like to get my words down and then edit them later. I'm a lover of editing. I'm not a lover of drafting. So that's just my personal preference. So
I actually have another author who, Michael, I'll look up his name and put it in the description, that we had a podcast with last year, and he prefers editing to writing. So there's two. It's the only two I've ever met. I have to say. Well, as we wrap this up, I'm going to put you on the spot. Freedom, we usually do a shout out at the end of each podcast. Who would you like to give your shout out to?
I think I'm going to be naughty and shout out Raquel, Perla, and yourself, Michelle, for being my wonderful team. Because I couldn't have got this far without you guys, because it's been such a journey, and I'm so excited to still be going forward and continuing that. So thank you very much, and shout out to you guys.
Oh, thank you very much. We really appreciate that, and I know they will. Uh, what I'll do, my shout out, I think, is going to be editors and illustrators. Obviously, I have the best team. I'm slightly biased, just a bit. I do have the most talented. But my shout out is to all those who edit and all those who illustrate and who work with writers and to take them on the journey to become published authors and give and help them attain their dreams, which I think is really, really important. Well, Freedom, thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And we will do a follow-up just before the release so that we'll have some other tidbits available at that point in time. So once again, this is Michelle at Jasami Bookworm Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it today. And as always, I wish you all a sunny day.